Thank you for joining the CNA Instructor's Secret Cocktail. I am your pusher, Victoria Randle, and I'm here to give you some tidbits, okay? Some things you need to know when starting your CNA school. These are the top 8 secret forms that you need to start a CNA school. So let's get into it. The first one seems like a duh, but it's the CNA School application form. And although it may seem easy, you'll find when you start to draft it, it's not as easy as you thought. There are some key elements that you need to really think about when drafting and formulating your CNA application form, okay? I'll name a few of them. One of them definitely is that you want to think about their background and their education, so make sure that you're asking that. We always assume that CNAs are probably entry level, but I can tell you in my time, I've had master's prepared individuals from other countries come into the States and looking for a job while they're trying to, or looking for a skill as well, while they're trying to get everything moved over from their country. And so CNA potentially is a route for them, especially if they were already in the medical field. This is also going to key you in on some key elements that you may need to consider as far as literacy goes. Okay, some individuals who are coming into CNA school, they may not be successful if they have some literacy issues. So you need to make sure that you're capturing that information in the beginning in the application form, okay? So don't forget to add that as well. Another thing you want to know about is work experience. You want to know the type of professionalism they have, whether or not this is the first job for them or whether or not they've had multitude of jobs and they're just coming into a new market. So gathering that information is helpful as well. And then you always want to ensure that you get some type of emergency contact. And I know this sounds silly as well, but I'll tell you right now, I once had a student who had a seizure, and my secretary forgot to actually look over the application completely in its entirety to make sure that all the aspects were filled out, and that student skipped over the emergency portion. And guess what? The student had a seizure, and I had to call for help and care for them, had to call the EMS for them to be sent out, but I didn't have anyone to contact to let them know that I was doing that. So the emergency aspect of that application is very key, so make sure that you're looking into that as well. And then I simply ask students, why do you want to become a CNA? That's another great question to ask on the application, because you never know. You want to make sure that someone's getting into the business for the right reasons, and you want to make sure that you can counsel them. If they're saying kind of the wrong reasons right there, it kind of keys you in that this may not be something for them, and just having that discussion with them, just being frank, asking them what their expectations are, what do they really think a CNA does, and just giving them some career counseling. You may find that they're trying to go a totally different direction, so that's a simple question I like to ask. I don't like people to waste their money, and I don't like to waste my time either, so we get that out right. All right, the next form number 2, is definitely the drug screen form, okay? Not all people do drug screens at their schools, and not all states require drug screens at their schools. But I'll tell you who might require a drug screen, and that might be the nursing home that you're contracting with. So you always want to have a drug screen form on file, and if they're asking that you do a drug screen, do it, but make sure that that person is signing that they're going to do a drug screen. If you decide, you and your nursing home both decide that you don't want to do a drug screen, that's fine, but I always have one on file just in case. If there's an accident at the nursing home or something happens, I want to be able to get a drug screen done, especially if my professional liability insurance is requesting that, okay? So always have that drug screen on file, and sometimes that's a form you have to draft on your own. It also would be smart to find a company to contract with for your drug screens. And when I say contract, it's not like you have to pay them up front or anything like that. It's just that in the event that you need to call someone for a drug screen, you know who to call. You'll have them on speed dial, okay? All right, form number 3 is the background check form, okay? The background check form is just like the drug screen form. Some places may require that you have it. Some may not, okay? Some states may require it, some states may not. Definitely find out what your state guidelines are and find out, is it just a statewide background check or is it a nationwide background check? Because remember, those two are different. CNAs tend to be transient, so I get a lot of my students, I promise you, at least 80% of my students are not even from the state in which the program is. So, sometimes it is important to get that nationwide check, but just find that it is more expensive. But just find out what the nursing home you're contracting with is expecting, and then also find out what it is that your state is expecting, okay? And make sure that you're abiding by that. One more thing about the background check, though, I do want to mention is find out whether or not the nursing home you contract with cares about what's on their background, okay? Some nursing homes will definitely take certain misdemeanors and they won't take others. So definitely find out from your nursing home what backgrounds they're willing to accept and that they're not. My nursing home would not take any type of background that had any type of theft, of course, or abuse. But if it wasn't theft or abuse, they were willing to accept it. So definitely find out. Just because a student has a background doesn't mean that they won't be able to go through the program or that they won't be able to find work. You need to kind of find out what it is in your area that people are allowing on the backgrounds. If a student has a felony and nobody in your area is willing to accept a felony, don't take that student's money. Don't do that. Just let them know that this probably isn't a career choice for you. It might be hard for you to get work. Now, if you want to still move forward and go through it and the state doesn't request a background check, then you can't stop them. But definitely counseling them on that ahead of time is the most prudent thing to do, of course. All right, now the next form is the Evaluation Criteria Acceptance Form. This means that I like this one because no one told me about this one at all, okay, at all. It wasn't until I submitted to the state that I realized that I had to write this, and I did it. Okay, so there is a evaluation criteria for the classroom, for the lab, and for the clinical portion, okay? Because all three of those are different portions that your student is learning in, and each one of them require different types of abilities. So you need to make sure that you're writing criteria for each. Be sure it's very clear and it's very concise, and that it simply states what you have to do to pass and what you have to do to fail, okay? If you're not clear and you fail the student, or if you don't even write the criteria and you fail the student can go and complain to the state on you. This is serious. If the student goes and complains to the state on you, the state will inspect you. And if they inspect you and they find that you do not have evaluation criteria set in place, two things can happen. They might cite you and now suddenly make you have it if they didn't before. Or the second thing is they're going to probably make you take the student back and allow them to do it again for free. Okay, so be careful about that. Make sure that you're writing your evaluation criteria in a manner that is understood. So, because I'm telling you now, there's going to be an issue if you don't. So let me give you an example, okay? One example would be if a student continues to miss their homework assignments and they miss their quizzes or they fail their quizzes. But when it comes to test time, they do magnificent. They get 100s every time. All right, what are you going to do with that student? They clearly know all the information because they're passing the test with flying colors, but they're not doing any of their homework and they're not doing any of their quizzes. How are you going to pass them with a conscience? How are you going to pass them? So you have to have criteria that states you need to get 80% or more in your quizzes. You need to have 75% or more in your homework. Whatever it is, it's up to you how you write it, but you just need to make sure that you're conscious about how you write that, okay? I am going to put together a video, so you can click in the link below to watch that video that tells you about how to write your criteria, your evaluation criteria, because that's a little bit more in depth, and I want to help you if you have some questions about that still, okay? The next one is the evaluation criteria feedback form. Evaluation criteria form is exactly what it sounds like, a form you're giving the student back, giving them feedback on the evaluation criteria that you've already laid out for them. What is the purpose of having evaluation criteria if you don't actually put it to use, right? So we want to give our students constructive criticism. Even if they're only with us for 3 weeks, they still need to know where they stand and where they can do better. Or if they don't need to do better and they're doing everything great, right? So an example would be criteria may state that for clinicals, your clinical criteria, you need to be on time at 6:45 a.m. every morning with your white scrubs on, your black shoes, and your hair back into a ponytail. Now, however, your student shows up at 7 a.m. every morning, they have on blue scrubs, and they have on orange shoes, and their hair is a complete mess. Are they following criteria? No, they are not. So yes, you can fail that student if you choose, and you would be able to uphold that because you have the criteria form that you've had them sign and you've put into their file. Okay, so make sure that you give feedback too, because if you give feedback and you say, hey, you're doing this and you really shouldn't be, but they continue to do it anyway, then you have the ability to fail them without feeling bad about that. Another form I'd like to mention is the instructor evaluation form. It's really, really, really good for you to know how your instructors are doing. So now most states do actually require that you provide them, the state, with an evaluation form, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But the form I'm talking about right now is just for you, for your own personal use in your business. So that information will highlight things, aspects that your instructor should be hitting, such as, do you feel that your instructor taught the material in a method that you can understand? Because teachers should be teaching in multiple methods so that all students can be reached, right? So you want to make sure your instructors are doing that. So you'll formulate a form that has these different questions, and if that's something you guys want, I can always do a video on that too. So comment in the sections below if you want me to do a video on that. If there's more information you'd like to hear about that, I'll be happy to provide that for you. Now, the other form I was going to speak to you about is the Receipt of Instructor Evaluation form. Okay, and that form is a form that, because some states make you provide the student with an actual evaluation form that the student will send directly to the state, and you don't have any business looking at that form, seeing what it says or anything like that. But what the state will look for is in that file, they want to see that you are offering your students the ability to evaluate you, okay? And you do that by giving them the evaluation form that the state gives you, and then you give them a receipt of evaluation form, and they sign that receipt of evaluation form saying, yes, this school did provide me with the opportunity to evaluate them, right? That's a form that you have to put together on your own. No one provides it for you. Okay, so that's another form to think about that you definitely would need. All right, now, another form, this is an optional form. It's completely up to you, but it would be a student payment agreement. All right, student payment agreement. If you decide to allow your students the ability to arrange a payment with you, you definitely want to put a form together to make sure that they stay on top of their payments, okay? Many students can't really afford to pay for CNA School in one big whop. They just can't, okay? So they might need it to be broken up for them. So please consider that and think about that when opening your school. You don't have to offer this, but it can be offered as a courtesy, okay? If you do, you need to be clear and you need to be concise, and you need to hold every student accountable to it. You can't bend the rules for one student and don't for the other, because trust me, they talk and someone will find out and you will be reported to the state for not abiding by your own rules. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to have to let the student do whatever it is that they wanted to do because you're not upholding your own rules, okay? Another thing to think about is that the language that's inside of that form needs to definitely discuss that if the student doesn't pay in full, what would happen? So let me give you an example. If the student is, like I write in mine, if the student is unable to make final payment before clinicals or make final payment before the final exam, they will not be allowed to attend clinicals or to take their final exam. And let me tell you why I word it that way. Some states say that if your student completed the entire program and they completed it in its entirety legally, you must give them certificate of completion and allow them to take their state exam. But did you get your money though? No, you didn't. That's a problem, right? So you want to make sure that you're not holding them back from getting them their certificate of completion because of money, because in some states that is illegal. But you can bypass that by saying, if I don't get my money by this day, then you cannot do this. If I do not get my money by X, you can't do this by Z. So make sure that you set that up in that student agreement, or else you will be stuck. Okay, fronting that bill. Anyhow, if you have any questions for me, be sure to put them in the box below, and please, please subscribe to my channel if you found this information valuable. That's right, hit that little red subscribe button and subscribe to my channel now. You'll see that I put out videos often to give you information to help you with your CNA school. Also in the description box below, you can also subscribe to receive my emails to get more information about different things that I'm doing in your area, or different emails, information that I'm pushing out to give you information you need to be successful, because that's what your pusher is here to do, to push information to you. Until next time, your pusher is signing out. Victoria Randle. You guys have a good one.